The first thing I wanted to ask you about, I was going through some of your recent past interviews, and in one of them you said something about this project makes me feel so complete that I'm in a different headspace. And I was curious, in what way are you in a different headspace?
That's a great question. I'm happy you started off with something good like that. Um, but in all seriousness, I think what happened for me is that, to make a long story short, and I don't want to jump around in case you got ways we want to go here, but my mom passed away at a real early age. And then my father passed away when I was in my mid 20s. And, especially my mom, these were always things that really wanted me to be artistic and make music. It felt like it was my way of escaping, as a young kid. Um, and the last album that just came out, it was about 7, 8 months ago now, May of last year, 2024. And the album is called You Can Do Better. And we released it on May 3rd, 2024, which for me was the 25-year anniversary of my mom's passing. And it just
Oh,
felt that, like, for me, all those years, all the I guess a couple decades of trying to do this music thing, it was all kind of based on that in some way, of like trying to find some sort of answers to questions you don't even know you want to ask, all that kind of deep stuff like that. But once that
right.
album came out, I'm years into sobriety. It just felt like 25 years of having to go through all that. It just felt complete, and that, I guess, in an artistic way. Like, if that was a painting, that painting is over now, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and there's a thousand different questions I have based on that one answer. Um, the but the first one being, because I've talked with a number of musicians who have gotten clean and sober, and a common theme I found about among some of them was that initial nervousness that they might lose that creative edge, and the worry that, oh, that was somehow tied in with whatever substance they used or abused. Was that fear with you? And I'm also curious how you are different as a musician now that you have been clean and sober.
That Yeah, that's great. You know, it's a complex question, because like, for example, when I first stopped drinking, there was a lot of drinking I was doing. And again, being a young guy in my mid 20s, going out on tour, free booze, I mean, we're having fun. It was all about, like, yeah, we weren't making any money. Sometimes we were paying to be there, but man, we felt like
Yeah.
rock stars. We were playing shows, but yeah, I think you get so used to going out there, and that's what you do. We go out, we hang with the boys, we have some drinks. And I do think you start to feel like this is all tied into one thing. Some people don't like my behavior, but in my mind, that's the behavior that makes all this happen. So you got to, like, figure out how to do that. And yeah, the first couple months was pretty tough, especially at the time. The guys I was out with, they were still drinking and partying. So it was pretty tough for me, just because no one
Mhm.
seemed to care that I had to stop. But as time goes on, you get used to it. I think I'm over 6.5 years now, no drinking, and
Wow.
I have zero interest to go back. So I think it's just that time in there. And to go to your second question about, did that change things? Maybe that was the first, but it does. I think you just have to find that new way of going. I don't want to call it like find your new home inside your mind, but you almost have to. It goes back to a few years ago. I then became addicted to opiates, painkillers, because of the alcohol. I got something called pancreatitis. They put
Mhm.
me in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. So that ended up being another thing. And I went to treatment about 4 years ago, almost just a month ago is exactly 4 years. And I always told everyone, once I got into treatment and I really stopped all the stupid, got the withdrawals and all that kind of stuff, or I detoxed essentially.
Yeah.
Changing my mindset was the most important thing I could have done. And I really think the power is in your own mindset. I know it's easier said than done, but I think there was a lot in that. Changing how I looked at things, not how people looked at what I did, but how I was
Yeah.
looking at kind of my own thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, how did that maybe then influence your lyric writing?
That's great. So, in treatment about 4 years ago, detoxing, I was in such a bad place. I mean, I'm sure you've heard or know someone, or we all know someone these days with addiction. So those withdrawals are no fun. It's very painful, long time, no sleep, just mental breakdowns, nonstop. And it was finally in that of sweating and shaking. They had this old piano in the treatment center, and I would go in this room and lock the door. And it was at that time that I really felt like I was vulnerable in the sense that I would be more open and say things maybe I wouldn't want to say normally, or feel like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like less comfortable to say these things. And then coming out of that, really getting fully sober, back to normal. It definitely took me a while to be able to be open. And I think that was one of the things, is that when I would be under the influence, I'd feel like I wouldn't be as nervous to maybe say certain lyrics that I would normally, where I'd really think about, okay, is that, how are people, you know what, just little things like that, but those little
Yeah.
things make a big difference, absolutely.
Right, right. Yeah. And no, it's and and that's the other kind of cool thing that I've found. I've yet to hear anyone that says no, I lost the gift or whatever it is. It's just they do it in a different way, or they developed new appreciation for creating their art, their music, their words.
Maybe even
Uh,
going back to what we said a minute ago about changing their own mindset on it just being different, but figuring it out in that new path, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think you could also argue that, a lot of the lyrics, especially on this new album, are also geared toward figuring it out and finding your own path and things of that nature. And, you know, the, the first single, the title track, You Can Do Better. Um, it kind of reminds me of whenever I see, people online, people on television, whatever, and they're always talking about you have to work harder and you have to have a better work ethic. Somehow it's always coming from someone that reached their success either through absolute luck or just outright nepotism, and it's like those are the people that are always feel like screaming at me, oh, you should work harder, you should do better. And I'm curious if, in your addressing this, yours was number one, pointing out the hypocrisy of the people that are constantly telling you you can do better, and how much of it is also, well, better according to who, and what standards are better are there?
Right, right. I love that you asked that. I know I say that for every question you ask, but you just got some good stuff here, Chris. I'm telling you.
Okay.
But yeah, and you actually caught that. A lot of people assume you can do better is maybe me or whoever on the song telling people that you can do better. But it's really the opposite of you feeling like you have tried and done everything and put your heart and soul into anything, and all you ever get told is you can do better than that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's kind of where the dot came from. It started out with a thought of, okay, let's tell people they can do better. But then going through daily life, it'd be like, no matter what would happen, people are never happy. They're never pleased. They always assume you can do more for them. Or so that's kind of what it was. And Chris, going back to what you said about like lyrics, figuring yourself out, I feel like that's definitely been a theme of mine over my career so far, the 10 years or whatever, is all that stuff, overcoming, triumph, being the underdog, but it's always trying to find it in, like we keep going back to it, that new perspective. So I try to keep
Mhm.
it fresh like that. I just feel like those types of lyrics, that's what comes out when the time is right.
Yeah, and also because in the reading I did, and Lord knows this is not unique to your uh, um, musical journey. I read about music executives that try to pigeonhole you in one way or another, but you kind of felt the urge to go this way, to go that way, to mix. You take a little bit of category A, mix it with category B, mix it with category C, and that's how you come up with a different kind of unique sound. And to me, that is the definition of like finding your own better, where there's all these like, oh, you can do better, but it's like, well, you don't really want me to do better, you want me to do your thing,
Yeah.
whereas what I'm really doing is doing better.
Yeah, I love that because it's so true that way, and I think we can all relate to that in some sort of way, whether it be at the mechanic shop or at the airport or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know. To me, there's power in the message of the music. At the end of the day, for me, it always came down to that because again, I was that kid with the traumatic childhood and feeling lost, and it was always the music that would be there for me to feel like, you know what, everything's going to be all right. We just got to get this together, and I think it makes you strong too. I mean, just however you have to go through it.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, as you alluded to, you've had quite a bit of tragedy in your life, and I'm wondering, for those of us not musically gifted, what is your advice for not only surviving but thriving after having gone through tumultuous events?
I wish I had the answer for that, honestly. And again, it seems like, yeah, he did fine. He got the music, but it took a while. I don't think I was naturally gifted, so to speak. I mean, I could
Hmm.
carry a beat to the most basic ability. And I would see friends of mine who are like, oh, I can play piano by ear. I can just hear something. We can go. And I was always like, man, that's not me. But over time, you start to out that maybe that is you. And
Hmm.
even going back to again, like my mom passing away from an overdose at 10 years old. In my teenage years, I would watch all these stories of the artists I look up to, like Ozzy or whatever the case may be. You'd be like, man, these guys' lives are filled with tragedy and all this kind of stuff. And I'd never put it together that, hey, me too. It was like, oh, these guys have it so bad. And you know what I mean? Like, it's so strange to me how I myself would be like, oh, everything's fine. And yet I was in the middle of my own stuff that you almost don't even realize till so much later. And it really, to me, that's thinking about this right now, Chris, is like hearing all of that. It's like, well, a drug addiction kind of makes sense when you put all that
All
together. I
right.
mean, because how are you going to do it if you don't have the music? And I don't know. I think I was a bit jaded because I had been in the music for so long. And yeah, I know I'm all over the place here, but it's all
No,
real
no.
tough. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's there's been numerous references to how Ozzy was an influence on you. What I find interesting in cases like this is your sound is very different from Ozzy from Black Sabbath, and I love the fact that you can be influenced by someone and not mimic them,
Sure.
not just become a clone. So, but I'm wondering from your perspective, what is the commonalities between your music and his?
I'm glad you asked that. I've been seriously waiting for someone else because I get it. I really do get it. For example, there's a radio station on Sirius XM called Octane. It's the hard rock channel. Like if
Okay.
you're a hard rock band, you want to be on Octane on Sirius XM. I've been fortunate, had many singles there over the years. But they're kind of the same way in the sense that I'll send them the music and they'll be like, whoa, this isn't hard rock music. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about here. Because to me, like, so for
Yeah.
example, the song You Can Do Better, actually, it goes into that chorus after that low, You Can Do Better. And then it comes into
Yeah.
that big chorus. Now, so I see how people hear that whole package and say, well, where's the Sabbath? I hear all this electronic stuff. There might be a hip hop beat coming here. The vocals are, modernly, whatever you want to call it, auto tuned and all this kind of stuff. But what people don't hear is like underneath all the bells and whistles, if you stripped away all of that electronic stuff, if you just left the guitar, drums, bass, and vocals, all you would hear are Black Sabbath riffs, chord progressions, things like that. They're just dressed up in a little bit more of a modern electronic fashion. So,
Hmm.
again, depending how you look at it, you can see it there. But I totally get why people don't hear that straight up because it isn't a carbon copy, so to speak.
Yeah. So basically, it's just okay. Here's the input of all this stuff, but when you filter it through your own mind and your own creativity, this is how that comes out. And
Absolutely.
so,
And
yeah,
to me, it's always about we could be in here. I could have four guys in here. We're in my studio right now. We could say, okay, today we're going to make a great song. And someone will say, well, is it going to be a hard rock or a metal song? Is it going to be a country song? What's it going to be? And I'm always in the sense of let's just make something great. We're not worried about,
yeah,
oh, this is a rock song, but why is this electronic piece coming in? It's coming in because we thought it sounds cool, even if it doesn't make sense for that time. I believe that more of that, you know, it'd be easy to go in and copy everything. I mean, you listen to
yeah.
the radio, you can hear that right there. I just feel like there's no point of doing something that's not authentic, even if it doesn't feel right the first time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it's,
Yeah.
yeah. I just try to make whatever feels right. That's the way to go. There is no right or wrong answer when we're putting music together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I just finished Alex Van Halen's autobiography where he
Oh yeah,
talked
yeah,
about their first big tour. They opened for Black Sabbath, and
yeah,
just how nice everyone in the band was to them,
yeah.
and taking them under their wing, but also like Ozzy saying, "God, they kicked our ass every night," and just,
Oh yeah. You
and
know what? I
but
think I got the Black Sabbath shirt on now
nice.
just for this, so it all ties in.
Okay, very
Yeah.
cool.
I've been meaning to read that new Alex Van Halen book, by the way. I'm glad you brought that up too.
Yeah, it's a good read. It's a good read. Um, and then the other thing that comes out with a lot of the tracks on this album is what's I would call a different musical choice. Is there's kind of this juxtaposition in that the a lot of the music is very kind of driving, hard charging, but a lot of your lyrics, your vocals rather, are laid back, and not easygoing, but just not in your face as much as the music, and it becomes this really interesting combination where it's like, okay, the your pulse is quickening because of the sound, but the vocals just kind of glide along, and I'm
Yeah, for
wondering
sure.
how much of that is intentional and how much of that is it's just me and what comes out.
Honest to God, it's just what happens. Maybe it's maybe even for a lack of being able to do some cooler things in certain areas, But again, I try my best, and I like to think that you know it's a tough one, but yeah, I guess we can go back to Ozzy. I would compare it to like when you could hear some heavy Ozzy stuff, but Ozzy was never really like a. Today, when we say metal, I'm thinking like death metal,
Yeah.
like screamo vocals and stuff like that. So I don't really know. I think it just kind of happens organically that way. As much as cool as it would be for me to say, "Oh, I totally do that like that just for cool." And some people might want more. But I like to think that as we go here, I'm trying new things vocally. And if we go back to my albums from several years ago, I like to think that I try to come up. I don't ever claim to anyone to be that I'm a great singer or I'd be on American Idol or anything of that nature. To me, it
Mhm.
really is all about the package, the song, the performance, the fan base itself. It's all kind of one thing. And again, it's not always about being the best at singing or guitar playing, but who has that passion, that dedication, and who's willing to work harder than the next guy. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. I know that doesn't have anything to do with the vocals on the
Oh yeah.
thing. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
No, because I think that's a key element, and many people have brought them up in interviews. Interviews. There's lots of people I've heard which they sound perfect, and yet there's something missing. It's like they're
Yeah,
right on key and all this kind of thing, but it's like, all right, I don't believe you believe what you're singing, or
right.
it just doesn't sound like it's coming from you. And so hence this long history of people who are not traditional singers, trained singers, but it's like you hear that and you're like, it just hits you in the solar plexus, because it's like, oh no, I'm connecting with this emotion. um
Absolutely. And I
and
used
then
to hear that a lot when I was younger, especially when I first started vocals. I would always hear comments of like, "We don't believe it. You don't sound like you believe in yourself." And that is also it's. I'd like to think that it's confidence, the confidence you have. I used to have everyone leave the room when I was going to record with the producer because I'd just be so nervous. Where now I can
mhm.
go on a live stream and screw up and sing like that. But yeah, and it, maybe with my music, again, my fan base is definitely unique in the sense that it's a lot of gamers, younger teenagers. It's not maybe a mainstream thing, but for some reason, these songs connect with this certain group of people. And again, when we show up to a random city we've never been into before, and parents tell us that they drove their kids 10 hours on a school night to be there. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that blows my mind and just makes me, at the end of the day, beyond grateful. You know what I'm saying? Whether it is or isn't what people want it to be.
Right, right. And regarding that, I was fascinated with the way you adapted your tour to be more inclusive to your fans in the sense of not playing in, let's say, a typical club, but playing in, VFW halls, Veterans of Foreign Wars, having earlier start times and things of that nature, so you could adapt to your younger audience and the parents who drove them to it. Which I don't know that there's many bands that would go out of their way to change that much, or to uh, um, kind of rejigger the whole system to
Absolutely.
adapt to the audience. What was the most challenging aspect of making that work?
So basically, the reason we did that too is because we would go out, open for bands and clubs. It would always be when we'd have an all ages show, we'd notice all these young kids and they'd be like, "Oh, we came just to see you." And again, playing 5, 6 years out there, a lot of nights playing for empty houses or the bartenders. I mean, we did that all the time. So it was nothing new to me to play to nobody essentially. We'd start seeing these young kids come out. And then a couple years ago, we did a show in Omaha and it happened to be all ages. Something happened where we were like opening and it just ended up where we played at like 7 o'clock. It was the all ages show. It was like a storm telling you, like, hello, take a look at this. So we get there and there was a line out the door, waiting for the doors to open. And still, it's like, there's no way that's for us. It's got to be for one of the opening bands. And I'm still in there, like, setting some gear up. They open the door and all these kids rush, maybe 10, 20 kids rush up. We're like, oh, can we get your just pictures? I was like, holy shit. Like, I never felt like that before. Where like all these people wanted to come up and take the picture and do their YouTube
Hmm.
stuff. And we played that show. After our set was over, there was two more acts, and the entire time they played to nobody because everyone was over at our line buying merchandise. And I even felt bad. Like I was like, dude, you guys check this out. Um,
Yeah.
but that was like, wait a minute. Like, is it possible that if we actually went out because of all of our Minecraft videos and YouTube stuff, which is kind of how we're basically known in a bigger fashion, let's say. What if we
Hmm.
did that? So we tried that. And yeah, it was like, okay, but there again, the challenge was is that a lot of traditional venues and clubs, they couldn't do all ages, most of them. And if you could get all ages, they did not want to do a show at 6 or 7 o'clock. They want people to stay in as late as possible, drink. And we just
Right.
kept saying, if it's people past midnight that are at the club partying, that's not our audience. They're there to jam and have some fun. They don't care who's on stage necessarily, to a degree, if you know
Mm.
what I'm saying. So yeah, that was pretty much it. We started renting American Legions, VFWs. We sell all the tickets. We do everything from the ground up at these shows. And no BS to you, Chris. It's been the most successful shows and tours I've ever done. Even opening for
Mm.
big bands, playing 5 times bigger crowds. It makes more money doing this and more real connection with the fans than anything else. And to me, that connection is always most important.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's really fascinating.
And I
And
bring up the money only from we do run a business here and it has to be profitable in some way, but we try everything we can to give the people their value for their hard-earned ticket money. Absolutely.
yeah, no, I think that's a great example. Like one of the bands I work with is this band called Sister Hazel, and they do all these different kind of things. They're on the Rock Boat right now as we speak, and which they host every year, and all these different things. And like I asked their bassist, comes up with a lot of the ideas. How do you work this? And he said our goal is, even if, like, here's what we're shooting for. If we come up to 75% of what we aim for, the fans will still think they're getting away with, they're paying too little for it. Like, we want to make them
Absolutely.
feel like, okay, I got my money's worth, even if we don't reach 100%.
Uh, yes. And there again, like for example, our shows, most nights we sell 50 tickets to the show. And that's it. Because we do sell $50 per ticket. So that's a
Hmm.
premium ticket. But
Yeah.
for our level, it's not premium compared to Taylor Swift or something. This would be nothing for that. But at our level, we try, even for those 50 fans, each ticket is a VIP. So after the show is over, I will stay as long. I meet every person. We'll stay 2, 3 hours afterwards, sometimes just making sure everyone got at least a couple minutes to hang out. We take the
Hmm.
pictures. We do a bus VIP thing before the show where a select few people get to come on our bus. We play a few acoustic songs. And half the time we don't even have opening acts because everyone is just so into their Blacklight District world. They love this song and that song and this song from their favorite videos over the years. And I love the fact that we've been able to make this a bit of a success, not following other people's path. So that's why, to me,
Hmm.
I'd rather play in front of my 50 people every night for the rest of my career than 10,000 people every night that don't care or are interested. And again, that might sound weird, but when you get in that mindset, for me, it was just such a difference maker in terms of actual impact on people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also heartening to hear, if only because there's so many people out there selling cookie cutter solutions, to bands or even to individuals and say, "Oh, follow this formula and then, you'll be successful." And they're trying to again put everyone into this little box.
Yeah.
And so I love that it's like we just followed where the fans took us, where our music took us, and it was way more successful, not, taking the road less traveled, basically.
I compare it to radio. So throughout my entire career, most executives I work with are always like, we got to get on radio. We got to do radio. And they don't want you to say this and this kind of stuff. But radio is all a bunch of bullshit. You just pay money to get on there through someone. Oh, no, don't say that. Oh, yeah, who cares? I'm just tired of acting like that's such oh, we got a
Yeah.
number one on radio. No, you bot your way up to a number one, which is fine. I've bought in myself. But it was again, people would say, oh, well, you got 10 million streams on these Minecraft videos, but that doesn't matter. Those are all nerds watching that. You want people on Octane or this radio station that are going to, and to me, that was just always like, dude, what planet are you guys from? You think 10 million people on the internet doesn't matter? And here
Right.
again, you know, a couple years later here, most of those people that tell me that are trying to stay afloat right now because they've stuck in their ways. And again, these are the guys that want to radio. They just want you to pay. It's all a payola scam and just
Hmm.
it sucks, man. But there
Yeah.
again, hence the reason we're tired of listening to these guys. Once we actually went into our own world, it has been nothing but I mean, in all honesty, record breaking things that we never thought would even be possible to happen on our own has happened now because we took a bet on ourselves.
Yeah. And then, you've alluded a couple of times to the Minecraft videos, which have really brought a lot of attention to your music. Uh, and a couple of questions on that. Number one, how much input do you have into the look, the storyline, etc. of those videos?
Well, that's a great question also. I work with the guy Rainimator, that's his name, it's his channel name. Um, Basically one-on-one. We've had a one-on-one relationship. As far as storyline and looks of the video, I can have some input, but I typically leave that up to him because to me that's what he does best. Making the videos, making the stories, putting all that together. I do have a very big say in which songs we use. Now, at the end of the day, it's always going to be his call. It's his series, his videos. Um, I like to push a certain way, or if I just have a feeling, or if I have some data on a song that we've released already, and I can say, hey, out of these three songs you're looking at, this one has much higher stream rate, things like that. So we try to be data driven, but also try to do what makes sense in the stories. But essentially, all storyline stuff stays with Rainimator. I'm just here
Hmm.
making the music. And again, this all started because radio was so expensive. I didn't have any more money to waste or blow on it. I was sitting there being like, okay, I think I have nowhere to go. Like, what can I do? And I would search my name up on YouTube, Blacklight District, and I found this anime
Right.
video, had about 1 million views on it. And I was like, wow, 1 million views on this cartoon. So I
Yeah.
emailed that guy. I was like, hey, I saw you use this video. What, you want to use a couple more songs? And that was kind of how it started. We got like 1 million more views that first month. Then I started seeing Minecraft videos, which were different. These would have 20, 30 million views. I was like, dude, we got to get into that. So I reached out to like the top 3 or 4 Minecraft channels I could find. And it just so happened that one of the biggest guys had heard of my song from these smaller videos we had just done, like 2 weeks
Mm.
before. So he emailed me back. Long story short, we've been partners ever since. I supply the music. He supplies this. We've shared revenue, but he's essentially taken me from a 5,000 subscriber YouTube channel to 250,000 right now and 1 billion streams. And it's been incredible to watch that audience who again, if you look at Minecraft, I consider almost like a soundtrack. It's just the soundtrack to another
Hmm.
thing or a commercial. And it just so happens that Minecraft has this insane audience, and I've kind of been drilled into that world, so to speak, which has ended
Yeah.
up a great thing now, obviously.
And then has it in turn influenced you in any way? Immersing yourself in this world, has it, I don't know, influenced the sounds you use, the words you choose, any of that kind of stuff?
To a degree, I might like I definitely have used less explicit language several times just because of like thinking, okay, if this song was really well, I want it to have more opportunities. I try not to let a lot of that dictate the actual sound of the music. Obviously, we could say, well, let's just write Minecraft sounds and songs about fighting with swords and shit like that, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
right.
um, I almost felt like it was better to stay in lane, and if anything, it helped me. I give full credit to the Minecraft world for making me, or rather not making me want to just be like, okay, I want to make mainstream music like Post Malone and have a ton of hip hop beats, which I have done, like going through when I'd see these artists that are 10 years younger than me making millions of dollars. And I'm like, dude, what am I doing? Is it because I'm a rock guy? But I think after I finally let go of the obsession of being on rock radio and doing all this other stuff and then being pop star and pop radio, it was like, man, this is my audience. I'm just going to make the best music I can, hard rock or not. And I felt like it helped me stay hard rock in an era where it's hard to break out as a big rock band. I mean, today I don't think
Yes.
there's any in terms of mainstream like big stars, but you know, so
Right. Right. I mean, there's ones out there with, great followings and things like that. Um,
there we go. I guess I
there we
mean
go.
like on a mainstream like Taylor Swift or
Right.
stadium level stuff,
Yeah.
like Metallica. I guess I just mean in terms of new acts that come out. I don't know, but you never
Yeah.
know what the future holds. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then you were talking earlier about, okay, you even don't pigeonhole yourself in terms of, all right, whatever's coming at me creatively, whatever I feel a song needs, that's where we take it. And I thought a great example was a later track on this album called Drunk Man's Blues,
Oh, yeah.
which is very different from all the
Yes.
previous stuff that went before it. I mean, it's still you singing and everything like that. But, I'm wondering how that one came about because it's like, oh, wow, this is a bit of a jog to the left.
And again, Chris, I'm not BSing you. I've been waiting for someone to ask that very question because it is so different. And before we put the album out, there was a big debate on do we include this song or not. Most of my team did not want to put the song on there. Again, it's a little more, yeah, I don't think explicit, but it's a little more mature in its language and the things like that. But my new guitar player, Justin, who's been in the band for about 3 years now, this was actually a song that he had written. He sent me a voice memo, and typically I'm not into that. I don't like to sing other people's words. I'll work with music if he brings in some riffs. Okay, let's start on that. But I'm not big into doing that. So he had essentially like 95% of the song, music and lyrics and such, written. And I was listening to it a few times, and it just kept taking me back to feeling like I can relate to this guy's mindset right now from how maybe I was several years ago. So to me, that was kind of the connection. And Justin being a new member of the band, this was kind of me bringing him a little more into the forefront to get a little different stuff. Because one guy can only write for so long before eventually it does start to sound a little. So again, that's just in the spirit of trying to bring in some fresh, even though it's an old sounding thing. I had never done kind of a bluesy jam like that. Takes me back to the Sabbath days, thinking of that nature. So it was all in good fun. But I do appreciate you bringing that one up.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great, again, another great sign of, okay, we're not even going to pigeonhole ourselves. It's like this came up during this creative period. It fits on this album.
It's not one of the most streamed tracks from the album, though. I'll tell you that. It's noticeable. But see, I'm not afraid to say that because that's what we do is we want to see what the now on the flip side of that, when we go to these shows, there are that small niche fan base that are like, dude, the Drunk Man's Blues is the best song you've ever done. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So you get it
Yeah,
from both sides. Yeah.
right. and and also, one of my current pet peeves is just, because I still, if I like an album, I buy the disc, I buy the vinyl, and because the sound quality is so much better,
Yeah,
but the industry doesn't means that doesn't count, because they can't spy on me. Like, so if I listen to an entire album, no one knows about it,
right.
because they weren't able to spy on me, and they weren't able to shove their ads at me, and all this kind of stuff. And then then all the sleazy stuff that Spotify is trying nowadays. And so, that's where it's like, yeah, I know it's great if, I love it when, clients have their songs streamed a bunch of times, but it's like there's still a lot of us out there that they're not, you can't monitor us, but we still love the music, and we're very focused on it and absorbing it, but there's no way to track that, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not getting your on your 150th listen, I don't get my 1 unit sale. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Which is
right,
yeah. But and I took a few years off from putting any of our albums on CD because of what you're saying. It's like, man, I don't even know if people want that, especially now when we have the young audience. But what's blown my mind is that this new album, You Can Do Better, we printed a real nice 4-panel digipack of it, went out on the road, and these kids, man, they love it. It's like a collector item. I always go back to this night. I can't remember where we were, but my tour manager came up. He's like, dude, I just saw this kid and his dad walking out the door with the CD. And the kid goes to his dad and he's like, so dad, how do we actually listen to this? Like, he didn't know that you actually take the CD. He thought somehow it just came out of there. And
right, right,
but I love that, even though they don't know what it is, the fact that I guess at the end of the day, I just love the fact that I was a kid who loved guitar and rock and roll. And the fact that I can be a guy in my mid 30s now, and young kids are maybe just even a little bit picking up a guitar, or I'll hear someone say, dude, you got me in because of you. Now I checked out Metallica or this and that. That's
right.
what I love the most, because when I was a kid, I always wanted that.
I've already fired a lot of material at you, but is there, as we wrap up, is there anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about?
Not really. I'm just gonna plug that we got our red carpet tour continuing on, starting in about 3 weeks from now. In Indianapolis, VIP sold out, about 10 tickets left, so that's exciting. Um, I am, as you see on my name here, I'm the CEO of something called AK-19 Entertainment. So that's
Hmm.
my label. We put all the Blacklight District stuff out through there. I have two artists on the label. One is named Rob Shiner. We just finished his album. I'm going to be a guest on his first single coming out February 8th, and he will be opening our red carpet tour. And
Nice.
yeah, we're just going to stay on the road, keep the content growing, and just try to super serve our fan base, essentially.
Yeah.
So
No, that's very cool. All
I'm
right.
just grateful to be in the spot. And again, Chris, grateful that someone like you, I'm very impressed with your show here too, by the way. I
Oh,
love
thank you.
talking to you. I hope I can come back someday. And yeah, man, it's been great.